Hi everyone, welcome back to DGMZ diwan-e-ghalib-meri-zubaani. To all our returning viewers, we welcome you back. We are delighted you could join us again. And for the new viewers, we are happy that you discovered the podcast and decided to tune in for the first time. Now, today's episode is part of the DGMZ Miniseries that we are currently running at the channel. The series is dedicated to the immortal love story of Layla and Majnun. We are exploring the story via narrating the story from a book, in addition to exploring the story through other art forms like paintings, Urdu poetry, shairi, etc. So today we will start the narration from chapter 26. But before I do that, DGMZ would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and appreciate Suluk Press Publishing House for allowing us to narrate the story from their publication titled The Story of Layla and Majnun by Nizami, translated from the Persian and edited by Rudolph Gelpke. English version in collaboration with E. Matin and G. Hill. Final chapter translated from the Persian by Pirzia Inayat Khan and Omid Safi. Now, the description section of this episode will have a link to this book for viewers who want to own a copy. We will also post links to DGMZ Ghazal episodes, where Ghalib mentions Layla Majnun and the love story in various contexts. So, let's begin with the narration for today. Start of narration. The Story of Layla and Majnun, Chapter 27. Next morning, when, with all resplendent stars aboard, the vessel of the night had speeded down the Tigris river of the sky, and the sun once more pitched her shining tent on the blue meadow, Ibn Salam, too, gave his caravan the signal to start. How happy he was! He had left his treasures behind, and his beasts of burden were returning without their loads. But what did all the treasures of Arabia mean to him, beside the jewel which he had worn? He had a litter prepared for Layla, richer outside or softer within, none could be imagined. Carried by camels, honored and served like a princess, she made the journey from the tents of her tribe to those in the realm of her husband. When they arrived, Ibn Salam said to her, "Everything you can see is yours. My possessions are yours. My kingdom is yours." But how did Layla reward him for his kindness? Well, the days passed, and the shadow which had begun to cloud the happiness in his heart increased and darkened. Who would feel differently if the woman of his passionate desire refused to share his bed, when after long pursuit he had finally won her and brought her home as his wife? Ibn Salam was left with nothing but hope and patience. Waiting from night to night, he tried, during the day, to read every wish in the eyes of his beloved. Yet, when darkness fell, he was left once more sleepless and alone. Why, he thought, is she not my wife? Why should I not take what is mine? Long enough have I tried to melt this wax with kindness. Perhaps force will achieve what is refused to gentleness. Perhaps that is what she expects. Action followed thought. Ibn Salam stretched out his hands towards the garden, determined to pluck from the palm tree the date which was not granted willingly. But alas, instead of the fruit, he felt the thorn. Instead of sweetness, he tasted bitter gall. Before he even knew what was happening to him, the gardener hit him so hard that he went nearly deaf and blind. "If you try once more," said Layla, "you will regret it for your sake and for mine. I have sworn an oath to my Creator that I will not give in to you. You can shed my blood with your sword, but you cannot take me by force." Ibn Salam was deeply in love with Layla. Therefore, he gave in to her wish. He said to himself, "Even if she does not love me, I would rather be allowed to look at her than not to possess her at all. As it is, I can at least glance at her from time to time. Otherwise, I would lose her for good." He went even further and, like a poor sinner, humbled himself, asking forgiveness for having tried to use force. "My heart is content, even if I'm only allowed to look at you. I would be a common thief if I asked for more." So it was, and so it remained. While Ibn Salam's eyes searched for Layla, hers looked only for Majnun, or for a sign from him. Might not a breath of wind bring a speck of dust from his mountain cave? As if drunk, Layla would sometimes take 2 or 3 steps, stumbling to the entrance of the tent. There her soul, sadder than 1,000 love songs, would escape for a while so that she could forget herself. She lived only in thoughts of Majnun, hoping for a message from him. The story of Layla and Majnun, Chapter 28. Meanwhile, Majnun was like a man who leaves the ruins of his home and village and, never settling down, wanders from place to place, alone but for the echo of his grief. A year had passed since Layla's marriage to Ibn Salam, and still Majnun had not even heard of it. He was a wanderer who did not see where he was going. Drunk with the wafting scent of love, the scent of a whole springtime is as nothing compared with it. Melancholia had colored his body amber yellow, and against such illness there grows on earth no healing herb. One evening, Majnun was again lying exhausted in the desert, under a blossoming thorn bush. Thorns and blossoms were only a blur before his burning eyes. He neither saw nor heard the rider who, traveling through the dusk of the steep on his tired camel, came nearer and nearer, like a poisonous snake, stealthily stalking its victim. The rider, whose skin was black as a Negro's, had spied the man lying under the thorn bush and realized who he was. A few steps away, he halted his mount, and scathing words penetrated Majnun's unhappy ears like the voice of a demon. Start of quotes. Oh ho, you there! Who does not know what is going on in the world, you idolater? Truly, it would be better for you to turn your back on your beloved. Do you still expect her to be faithful to you? You fool! Do you still hope for light where there is darkness? What from afar seems to you a shining beacon is a delusion. You are acting stupidly. A mistress like yours is worse than none. Then the stranger shouted even more harshly. She deceives you, don't you understand? The woman to whom you have entrusted your heart has handed it over to the enemy. Your seed has been scattered to the wind, and Layla has forgotten you. She has been given in marriage to another man, and believe me, she did not refuse him. Oh no! Every night she sleeps in his arms. She thinks only of kissing and making love, and swoons in sensual pleasure, while you torture and exhaust yourself. Is that right? Look at the abyss which separates you. Do as she does. Think of her no longer, just as she no longer thinks of you. And ever deeper, the black devil buried his poison fang in Majnun's soul. Did you believe her to be the one and only among thousands, different from all others? Ha! That is what women are like, fickle and faithless, from beginning to end. One like all, and all like one. For a while, she looked upon you as a hero, and then, all at once, you are nobody. True, they are full of passion, even more than we, but they pursue only their own selfish interests. Women are cheats. There is deceit and hypocrisy in everything they do. Never trust a woman. She will repay you with torture, and rightly so. A man who believes in women's fidelity is even more stupid than she who makes him suffer. What, after all, is a woman? A dustbin of falsity and viciousness. Peace when you look at her from outside, and turmoil within. As your enemy, she stirs up trouble with the whole world. As your friend, she corrupts your soul. If you tell her do this, it is certain that she will not. If you say don't do it, she will risk her life to do it. Happy when you suffer, she is eaten by grief when you rejoice. That is woman's way. That and even worse. Remember. So the black-faced one spoke, and there arose a moan of despair from the bottom of Majnun's heart. Like a bird dropping out of the sky, fatally wounded, Majnun's head dropped, striking the stones so hard that his spurting blood colored the earth red. His body, in tattered rags, twisted and writhed. Then his soul spread its night wings, and fled. Mercifully, a faint veiled his limbs. The rider watched. Whether man or demon, he was seized by pity. Ashamed and no longer proud of the magic power of his words, he jumped from the saddle and waited near the thorn bush until the lover's soul returned to his wretched body. Then he broke into 1,000 pleas for forgiveness. "Listen to me," he clamored. "Listen. What I just told you was a lie, a wicked lie. A bad joke it was, nothing more. I have turned the truth inside out. Layla has not deceived nor betrayed you, nor has she forgotten you. Broken-hearted, her face veiled, she suffers behind the curtain of her tent, longing for you. Her husband? Is he really her husband? He with whom she has never yet shared her bed. Although married to him, she has remained faithful to you, Majnun. She has no one else in this world, and not a moment passes when she does not think of you 100 times. More than a year has gone by since her marriage, and still Layla, chaste as ever, lives only in her love for you. What is a year, after all? If 100, even 1,000 years separated you, it is inconceivable that Layla would ever forget Majnun. Majnun listened to these words. Were they true? Certainly they soothed the agony of his heart. At last he could weep, and the tears streaming down his worn face into the dust made him look like a bird with broken wings. He had nowhere on earth to rest his head. Even the verses which came from his lips were lost, like his tears, because she, for whom they were meant, was far away. The Story of Layla and Majnun, Chapter 29. Majnun was shaken to the depths of his being. Before his eyes, he saw the dream face of his beloved. The flame of his longing tempted him to join her. He stumbled on his way like a bird dragging its wings in the dust. His grief had made him as light as a hair, and it was hard to believe that there was a breath of life left in his body. Desperately, longing to speak to Layla, but unable to reach her, he engaged the wind as his messenger, and many were the verses he sent to her. The wind obligingly carried his lines away, but responses there was none. Bitter is the wine of lonely love. Yet, if sometimes in his grief Majnun doubted Layla, his own passion did not abate. So he went on singing. You torture me to death, yet while I live, your beauty makes me love you and forgive. I'm the lamp, you are the sun, your might conquers triumphantly my waning light. Your radiant eyes, the fire envies you. Tulips and roses fade when meeting you. Be parted never, kneeling I confess, love and devotion, faithful unto death. Tormented I endure, resigned your blows. Yours, if I die, will be the blood that flows. The story of Layla and Majnun, chapter 30. It is a long time since we have spoken of Majnun's father, the old Sayyid. Had he not done everything that a father could do for his son? In his grief, he was like Jacob after Joseph had been taken from him. But Jacob had other sons. Not so the Sayyid. Age and sorrow had bent his back. He could clearly see his fate, as black as a Negro, who never becomes a white Tartar, though he be washed ever so often. For days and nights he sat in a corner of his tent, waiting for the sign of departure to his last resting place. He knew only too well that it could not be long delayed, and that the signposts erected for him were old age, weakness, and sorrow. There was only one tie still binding him to this earth. He was not afraid of death, but he did not want to leave without settling eyes on his child for the last time. Earthly possessions meant little to him, but to leave them to a stranger instead of his son pained him. He was determined to seek out Majnun, to talk to him once more, and perhaps, who knows, rescue his soul from its obsession, to tear his heart from the desert. This hope gave the old man greater strength than one would have thought possible. Again, he set out for Majnun's sake, his tired body supported by a staff, accompanied by 2 youths from his tribe, and confident that the Almighty would come to his aid. He traversed vast plains, scorched by the heat of the sun. He crossed lonely mountain passes beneath towering peaks. His feet sank into oceans of sand. He rested in the green island shade of many an oasis and hopefully asked every passing stranger for news of his lost son. For a long time his search was fruitless. At last, when his feet would carry him no longer, a Bedouin said to him, "Majnun, I know where he is. A terrible spot, a place of anguish, a cave in the desert like a tomb, right in the flames of hell. Don't go there." But the old man insisted, and after a last day's journey, reached his goal. His goal. One would not wish anybody to find himself in a place so deserted, so bleak and harrowing that it made the heart quail where he found his son. Was this really his son? This creature, hardly resembling a human being, a living skeleton, almost beyond this world, secluded like a hermit, immersed in idolatry, separated by only a hair's breadth from the land of death, with the flail already swinging over his head. He moved on all fours over the ground like an animal. Or was he perhaps already one of those ghosts from the lower regions who appear and vanish in many strange shapes. Then again, he writhed like a serpent, bareheaded, naked, except for a scrap of leather round his loins. His perturbed spirit had left the ruin of his body and dwelt so far away that he did not even recognize the visitor. When the old Sayyid set eyes on his son, he fell on his knees, overwhelmed by love and sorrow. He laid his hand on the unhappy boy's head. Tenderly, he caressed his hair and his forehead, while tears, like rain, streamed down his cheeks. Then only did Majnun lift his eyes. He looked at his father, yet did not see him. Who was this? Someone weeping? Weeping for whom? Majnun stared into his father's face without recognizing him. He had forgotten himself. How then could he remember anyone else? He turned his head and murmured, "Who are you? What do you want with me? Where do you come from?" The old man replied, "I have been looking for you all the time." When Majnun heard this voice, he suddenly recognized his father. Putting his head on the old man's knee, he sobbed uncontrollably. Then they fell into each other's arms, weeping and kissing again and again. For a long time they stayed, holding each other in close embrace. When the storm had abated, the father became even more distressed about the appearance of his son. Did he not look like one of the dead, resurrected in nakedness from the grave on the day of the Last Judgment? Something must be done. Quickly, the Sayyid took from his traveling bag a cloak of the finest linen, also shoes and a turban. What did Majnun care about these things? He put them on in obedience to his father. "Soul of your father," said the old man, "what place is this where to rest your head? Is this where you are hiding? Do you want to wait here for the arrow of a cruel fate, to be devoured by wild beasts when you have died? I implore you, escape while there is time. Truly, with us, a stray dog has a better life than you. Have you run so far in order to find this place? Believe me, you can run all your life without arriving anywhere. You will only get more tired, more weary. What use is all this agony? Whom does it help? Do you want to be the bed of a stream whose banks are burst by the floods? A mountain split by an earth tremor? You must overcome your grief, otherwise it will devour you, even if you be of iron. You have been a rebel all this time. Enough. Learn to accept this world as it is. Stop living in the wilderness like a beast among beasts. Do not hide in mountain caves. A versifying demon, a leech sucking its own blood. Try to be patient. Think of something else, even of trifling pleasures. Tempt yourself. Be gay and happy. Joke and dally. Anything, be it as fleeting as a breath of wind. Why not? That is life, whether its promises are true or false. Enjoy what the moment brings. What is of lasting value in this world? Enjoy what you have today and eat what you have harvested now. Never trust tomorrow. Your day is today. How do we know? Tomorrow, death may hold the reins. What use then to regret? Nothing counts but what you have achieved. A woman wears only what she has woven. A man reaps only what he has sown. If you hope one day to win renown, begin today. Behave as if your life were in the hands of death. Even now, then, when he comes, you will not have to worry. Only those who die their own death can hope to escape his claws. Hopefully, the old man continued. Does not all sorrow come to an end? Does not even a dog have a home? You are human, therefore live like a man. Or are you a ghoul, a demon of the desert in human shape? Even then, you should live like a man or return to the underworld. O my son, be my companion for the few days which still remain. For me, night is falling. If today you turn away, tomorrow you will look for me in vain. I have to go, and you must take over my task. Soon my sufferings will be ended, but you should be happy. Look, my sun is sinking, darkened by the haze of a long day. Dusk is waiting for me, my son. My soul is taking wing. Come then, come. Do not delay. Take my place, which belongs to you. Come. End of narration. So that was chapter 27, 28, 29 and 30. I hope you enjoyed the narration. Let's do some brief impressions for the chapters before we end the episode. Chapter 27. So this is where Nizami is describing Ibn Salam's marriage to Layla, and how with lot of pomp and show, reverence, respect and pampering almost, Ibn Salam brings Layla home as his bride. And very interestingly, Nizami on one hand describes Layla's determination post her marriage to stay committed to Majnun in her heart, mind, body and soul. And on the other hand, Nizami details how Ibn Salam agrees to this hard, bitter precedent set by Layla. This is how Nizami describes it. My heart is content even if I'm only allowed to look at you. I would be a common thief if I asked for more. So it was, and so it remained. While Ibn Salam's eyes searched for Layla, hers looked only for Majnun, or for a sign for him. She lived only in thoughts of Majnun, hoping for a message from him. Now, in the next chapter, chapter 28, this is where Majnun finally comes to know of Layla. Before that, Majnun is still continuing with his wanderings, his desolation, his isolation in the desert, and this is how Nizami captures that state of Majnun. Majnun was like a man who leaves the ruins of his home and village and, never settling down, wanders from place to place, alone but for the echo of his grief. Melancholia has colored his body amber yellow, and against such illness there grows on earth no healing herb. And then, while Majnun is continuing with his wanderings in the desert, there is this passerby traveler who comes and informs Majnun about Layla's marriage. Very interestingly, initially this traveler somehow decides to torment Majnun with a false, twisted version of how Layla is enjoying marital bliss with Ibn Salam, and how she has totally forgotten Majnun and how she has betrayed Majnun. And it almost seems that the traveler never anticipated the type of intense reaction Majnun is going to have towards these poisonous, false, provoking words, right? And this is how Nizami describes that intense reaction from Majnun. And there arose a moan of despair from the bottom of Majnun's heart, like a bird dropping out of the sky, fatally wounded. Majnun's head dropped, striking the stones so hard that his spurting blood colored the earth red. His body, in tattered rags, twisted and writhed. Then his soul spread its night wings and fled. Mercifully, a faint veiled his limbs. So Majnun gives up his soul. The pain and the torment is so much that he actually gives up his soul for that period of time. That is the intensity of his reaction to what this passerby falsely details. And when the passerby actually realizes the kind of reaction Majnun has had to that false story, he gets into this phase of shame and remorse for torturing someone like Majnun, for making Majnun feel so much pain, and sits with Majnun till Majnun's soul kind of creeps back into his lifeless body. And then he tells Majnun the real story, the real detail of events. And this is what he says. What is a year after all? If 100, even 1,000 years separated you, it is inconceivable that Layla would ever forget Majnun. And when he says this, Nizami again describes Majnun's reaction. This is what Nizami writes. Majnun listened to these words. Were they true? Certainly, they soothed the agony of his heart. At last he could weep, and the tears streaming down his worn face into the dust made him look like a bird with broken wings. Moving on to chapter 29. Here, Nizami still continues to describe the helplessness Majnu is feeling after hearing about Layla's marriage, his helplessness in not being able to reach Layla, see Layla, talk to Layla, and then ultimately he does what he always does in this helplessness. He takes support of the natural elements, the wind this time, to act on his behalf as a messenger and take his message to Layla. And then the last chapter, heart-moving, heart-wrenching, full of lot of emotion, right? The father decides right towards the end of his life that he will not be able to give up his soul without trying one more time. It's so typical of parents, right? They have to try one more time for the benefit of the child, to save the child, to make something better for the child. That is the type of patience, strength, and perseverance God grants to parents. So, Majnu's father, despite his old age, once again in chapter 30, undertakes this Herculean effort for his age and physical condition to meet his son one last time and try to save him, bring him back home. Nizami describes Majnu's father's journey like this. For days and nights, he sat in a corner of his tent, waiting for the sign of departure to his last resting place. There was only one tie binding him to this earth. He was not afraid of death, but he did not want to leave without settling eyes on his child for the last time. Again he set out for Majnu's sake, his tired body supported by a staff, accompanied by 2 youths from his tribe, and confident that the Almighty would come to his aid. And after this journey, when he finally gets to lay his eyes on his son, see how Nizami describes that. Was this really his son? This creature hardly resembling a human being, a living skeleton, almost beyond this world, secluded like a hermit, immersed in idolatry, separated by only a hair's breadth from the land of death, with the flail already swinging over his head. He moved on all 4s over the ground, like an animal, or was he perhaps already one of those ghosts from the lower regions who appear and vanish in many strange shapes? Then again, he writhed like a serpent, bareheaded, naked, except for strap of leather around his loins. A perturbed spirit had left the ruin of his body and dwelt so far away that he did not even recognize the visitor. So Majnu doesn't recognize his father. And when he finally does the emotional meeting, crying, embracing, hugging each other, and then the long monologue where the father once again tries to make Majnu realize that this is not going to end well for him. And unfortunately, he is not going to be around longer. Won't be around for much long to help him. So Majnu has to make a decision and come back, because nobody is going to come and rescue him anymore. The father is soon going to be gone. And very beautifully in this endearing moment, he addresses Majnu soul of your father, right? He calls Majnu the soul of him. He says, soul of your father, O my son, be my companion for the few days which still remain. Dusk is waiting for me, my son. My soul is taking wing. Come then, come. Do not delay. Take my place, which belongs to you. Come. Beautiful chapter. How yes, it's difficult for parents to let go, and they try their best to have the children accompany them on their last journey, be part of it, and they want to leave this world in a confidence that their child is in a good place, that their child will continue their legacy. And Nizami beautifully captures that in chapter 30. So, today we, like I said, covered 4 chapters from 27 to 30. I do hope you enjoyed the narration and the impression. If you did, please leave us a comment. If you know somebody who would like this content, humble request to share it via your social media. That is one way you can show your appreciation and support for the channel. As always, for the new viewers, my strong recommendation to access the episode titled Introduction to DGMZ, because that will give you a good insight into the motivation and inspiration behind this podcast. On the home page of the channel, there are many playlists. Feel free to explore those. One playlist is dedicated to all ghazals from Ghalib. One playlist is dedicated to this DGMZ Miniseries. There are other playlists on different topics. Explore them and access the episodes that pick your interest. I will go ahead and close this episode, sending a lot of love and light to all you dear viewers, and thanks for watching.